Hey everybody, this is Philip Moore from Gizmo Data. Happy Easter. I want to take you through a product I call GizmoEdge. It's a new distributed SQL engine that's powered by Internet of Things devices for running large analytical SQL queries. So if you have a large SQL workload, you can divide and conquer that workload with GizmoEdge. To learn more about it, let's go to gizmodata.com here, and we will go to the product section. And you want to click on the GizmoEdge product. Give you a little bit of a blurb about what GizmoEdge does right here, but the biggest thing I want you to see is the Try GizmoEdge Today section. So you can actually run SQL queries that will distribute and run on Internet of Things devices. So if you click on the GizmoEdge SQL IDE link, that'll take you to the IDE where you can run queries. If you want to run the worker software on your Apple device, you can click on this App Store download button, both on your iPhone or your Mac or your iPad, and it will install the GizmoEdge worker software, and you can actually participate in the distributed SQL cluster. All right, so we'll go ahead and click on the SQL IDE here. It'll take me to a sign-in screen. We just do this to collect information about who's running the query. All we do is collect the email address. There's no personal information other than that. So I'll go ahead and sign in with Google, but we support Apple sign-in, GitHub, LinkedIn, and Microsoft as well. So I'll sign in from my Google account. It just gives you a little bit of information here. I click OK, and it takes me to the ID. So here on the left, you get a schema browser. You can see the tables, their columns, and so forth. You can see we're successfully connected. I've got light mode and dark mode up here that I can toggle. And of course, you have a TPCH query selector here, but we go ahead and pre-populate query 1 from the TPCH query battery test in the IDE so you can just get going immediately. So if I run the query now, you'll see that it distributed and ran on 10 Linux nodes and 1 Mac OS worker, which is actually this MacBook that I'm running on right now, and I'll show you that in just a second. The 10 Linux workers are in Kubernetes. They're in the same cluster as the GizmoEdge server. So they're kind of always going to be there to help me divide and conquer this SQL workload. The data is actually below, and so if we expand here, you can see the result set that came back from the GizmoEdge server. And bear in mind, the GizmoEdge server actually distributed this work out to the workers, and they actually did most of the heavy lifting. The server just kind of puts the result set together. So if I go back down here, let's go ahead and add another worker to our cluster. So if you see here, I've got iPhone mirroring turned on in macOS, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the GizmoEdge worker app. And we'll clear the logs here, and I'll click the connection button here, so I'll connect the WebSocket, and so it's going to connect to gizmoedge.gizmodata.com using a pre-populated worker and password. We've already filled that out for you. All you got to do is click the connect WebSocket button. So if you do that, the first time you connect, it'll actually download a shard. I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. But if I already have a shard here, so I can go ahead and get started running queries. So you get some informational messages here, like this is saying, hey, this connected good up to the server. And then the up arrows mean this is a message sent from the worker to the server, and the down arrows indicate messages that came from the server down to the worker. You can see that, hey, the worker is ready to process queries for the shard of data that it has. All right, I'll clear the log here just to kind of make this easier to see. All right, so let's run a query. And remember, last time we distributed the 10 Linux workers and 1 Mac OS worker. So if we run again, hopefully it will run on our iPhone as well. And sure enough, it did. All right, so it distributed to the iOS worker here. You can see 1 of 1 devices completed, 1 Mac OS device completed the query, and 10 of 10 Linux workers completed the query. So if you look over here, you can see several messages happen really fast, by the way. You can see the down arrow means we get a message from the server. And you can see that it sent down a query here that the worker was to run. So it actually sent down the TPCH query 1, selected from line item with the where clause and group by. There's an informational message that the worker actually ran a copy command around that SQL statement and output the compressed Z-standard compressed Parquet data. It completed that successfully in about 0.156 seconds. It sent some data back up to the server in the form of base64 encoded Parquet dataset. And the server sent back a message that said, hey, congrats, you're the fastest worker for the query and for your shard of data. All right, so we'll go ahead and clear the logs and just try her again, just see how fast this goes. Now, pay attention to when I click the run button, which will be in just a second. Hopefully this will go very fast. And you can see how fast that executes there. and I can click it over and over and over. And there's a brief blurb here when you see the SQL statement executing. All right, so we can run other queries too. So this query here is, there's no aggregates, so it might not distribute. And when we clicked that, sure enough, it ran the server side, it was not distributed because there are no aggregates. So that's the kind of query that we really don't need to distribute very much. But if we go to query 3, the shipping priority, we have some group by columns and a sum aggregate. And so this should distribute just fine. And we'll clear our log here on the worker. And you can see it distributes here fine on Linux, iOS, and macOS. So we have divided and conquered this SQL workload. I'll go ahead and show you the macOS worker. So we have GizmoEdge worker on macOS as well. And it's been running these queries as you've been seeing. So it's on the App Store, the same link that you click on GizmoData.com on the GizmoEdge page. You can download the macOS worker and have your MacBook participate in the GizmoEdge cluster. So if we'll kind of stretch this over here, just bear with me. And let's hide our SQL execution history. And we will cover up my text messages here. And hopefully see some executions on the GizmoData Edge worker here. And so you can see it distributes to both workers very fast as I execute these queries. And let's get back to query 1. All right, so let's go to a challenging query 21. And you can see those run just fine. All right, so real fast, we just demonstrated, hey, how GizmoEdge distributes your SQL workloads to these IoT devices. We can handle 1,000 connections here. And we support currently Linux or Kubernetes workers, iOS devices, macOS devices. We're adding more. So Android hopefully will be soon. Windows workers will be soon. But right now we're limited to these types of devices. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys went to GizmoEdge.gizmodata.com and tried to run some queries and provide some feedback. Let us know what you think of the system. And hopefully it's my vision one day we'll have thousands of these workers and that we'll actually democratize these SQL workloads using all this ambient compute around. So if you think of all these iPhones, Mac TVs, smart TVs, Android devices, they sit at home at night, typically on a charger. And so it's a perfect time to run batch processing. And we could potentially set up a reward mechanism where you reward people for basically providing compute to process these SQL workloads. If you connect for the first time, I did want to demonstrate really fast. If you go here, you can delete your shard of data. And so this worker no longer has a shard of data. And so when we run a query, it actually won't participate in the query. So the way we get a shard is you connect. When you launch the app for the first time, you'll come hit that button to connect and hit your connect WebSocket. And you can see that the worker will download the shard. And I'll clear the logs here. And while it's downloading that shard, it's still not eligible to process queries. So you can see when I process, the MacBook participates in the query and the Linux nodes, of course. But the iOS device does not because it's not ready to process queries. So you can still run and the server knows who is ready to process the query. Anyway, so I just want to demonstrate GizmoEdge to you folks and wish you a happy Easter. And I thank you for your feedback and attention. Have a good day.